So, um, this is Stachys floridata, um, Florida betony, also called rattlesnake root, and you'll see why in a second. And this is a Florida native that's almost ripe here. Um, and it's in the Laminaceae family, so that's fancy talk for mint family. And so as I pass this around, I want you to notice a couple things. When you roll this in your fingers, there's a square stem to it. So most of your mint families have a square stem. The leaves are opposite, the way they're lined up on the stem, and then they alternate. So there's one set here, and then this set's going this direction, that set's going this direction. So we have opposite alternating leaf. The flower, if you look at the flower structure, you're going to see that's one of the common traits, the way this is set up in there. It's got the leaf edge is scalloped, so boop, 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 like that, which most of your mints have. The one thing it doesn't have that most mints have is it doesn't smell. So most of your mints have volatile oils. If you rub it, it would smell like something. So I'm gonna pass it. I'll grab some more for you to eat. But oh man, look at those. There, have a snack. It tastes okay. So, so this is if we're looking, you won't find a lot written about Florida betony, but you can find all the indications for wood betony. So that's the more common herb of commerce. It is a wonderful nervine and a mild anti-anxiety anxiolytic. So the aerial parts you can make an infusion of tea out of. You can eat it up. Yum, you just did. By the way, I encourage you always to taste anything, and some of what I will hand you is disgusting, in which case I am not offended if you spit it out on the ground. And this is Florida betony or rattlesnake root. Let's go here. So the other part, it's just starting. So, oh, there's a good one.
Ooh. Oh, what's the name of those? They're called,
This is rattlesnake root.
no, what's the name of the bulb thing called?
So this is not a rhizome, a tuber,
like a
I think.
rhizome or
Yeah. So it's quite specific. So if you're really into biology, this kind of looks like a nerve fiber, and this kind of looks like your spinal cord. So guess what it's good for? Nerve fibers and spinal cord and injuries to those things. So what I just told you was what's called doctrine of signatures, that if something looks like something, it's probably good for it. I wouldn't eat a random plant on that concept, but one of the ideas of, like, you'll find in a lot of cultures that they'll say walnuts are good for your brain. Yay! So eat some walnuts, who cares? It's food. Somebody got a grant for about $200,000 a while back that did a bunch of research on walnuts, found out that there's a unique essential fatty acid that's contained in walnuts that seems to reduce inflammation to your brain. You know, what people have said for 10,000 years, walnuts are good for your brain because it looks like a brain. So whichever way, it's all good. This is yummy. It's sweet like a carrot, but firm like a radish. So you can just say, oh, I'll just eat this because it's a good snack. These will get as long as my hand. Like in another couple of months, they'll be this long. Like I've got a mint here. I've heard, I have not found this source because if I did, I'm retiring, that these sell for about $150 a pound. Y'all find that source, tell me.
Where?
I don't know. I hear up north, actually. You know, New York City. No. They're really good pickled. Like if you don't know it, your pickle jar doesn't go bad after you eat all the pickles. You still got good pickling spices and pickle juice in there. You can take these and drop them in there. I had one of my advanced students has Tourette's syndrome and a bunch of other interesting disorders. We're sitting in class all day long with a lot of people around, really just kind of wigs her out a little bit. It flares up her Tourette, so she starts twitching a lot. and she lives about 3 hours from here. So she had to drive home after class, and she comes up and she's like, I don't know that I can drive. Really just kind of, my anxiety's flared up, and we had just talked about this plant. And so I was like, go out there, dig up 3 roots, because she felt very ungrounded. All the twitches are in her upper body, and so we say that's the heat flaring up and attacking the upper body. Her legs don't move, her arms and her head does. And so I was like, go out here, pull 3 roots out, eat them, and come back and tell me how you are. So 2 things happened. A, I made her go outside. B, she literally touched the ground with her hands. So we talk about feeling ungrounded, you know, and that sometimes when we feel ungrounded, we get anxious. So I made her touch the ground, and then I gave her the root, not the aerial part. And so again, this in the ground, and it nourishes, so it's a root, so it nourishes the nerves, and it's slightly moistening. She came back in and was like, all right, I'm good. She was done. So I'm gonna pass this around so you can look at it, and I'll try to pull a couple out for you to taste. And remember, I started and I said, oh, we need good gut flora. And so you can pay like $50, $60 for this really expensive good bacteria, the probiotics. And it's made out of soil microbes. So guess what? I'm knocking the chunks of dirt off of here. I ain't washing it. And like some of you have probably gardened in the past, and when you do, and you go and pull a carrot out of the ground, I don't know about you, but wiping it on my pants and eating it is the best carrot I ever had. And you got there peeling it and scrubbing it and doing all that. It's like, no, you grab a leaf, and that's covered with bacteria. There's a reason you have stomach acid. It's to kill the bacteria. Some of the good stuff passes through into your gut. All right, I'm gonna start passing those. I'll get a few more. This is the first class in a while that's gotten to taste these. And these are young and tender.
Do they just automatically grow back after you pull it
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, and you probably have this in your yard already.
Oh my goodness, they're really good.
Right?
A little bit
Who
like
would think a
that.
dirty
I
weed
eat those
would
like
taste
all
that
day.
good?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's a new favorite plant.
For sure.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. Oh, pretty good.
All right, here's a couple more. Pass the joy. And you can see it starts to look like a rattlesnake rattle.
Pretty good.
I think it died and then it came back. But I think I saw it the other day. I'm like, oh, I think that's a big one.
Interesting, right? How exciting.
See, I lure you in with something that's yummy. All right, how about, who still needs some? Ooh, look at the size of this guy. So that's starting to look more like a rattlesnake rattle. I had a guy who was like backhoe in his yard, and he thought these were grubs. And he was afraid of them because he was like, oh, some weird worm I got in here. I was like, no.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
All right, that's the last of them. I think everybody got some? Yeah. All right. So you may already have this in your yard. This is a weed that is a Florida native. So literally it's everywhere. If you buy a pot of it and get it in the ground, you can literally grow this. This got planted 2 years ago. This was like 2 pots this big. And you can, yeah,
Nice.
so it's literally spread
Yeah, it's
and can
really
create,
easy to grow.
yeah, super easy. That's a different guy. And so literally, it's like full sun, well-drained soil. It can handle sand. Yeah, good ground cover. It doesn't want standing water, so you can water it all you want, but not standing water. I'll find this literally growing in manicured lawns. It'll mix in with the regular grass.
And it's soft.
Oh, well, heck, as long as we're here, this is a beautiful example. This next one's spicy. If you don't like spicy, and so this is Lepidium virginicus. Don't ask me to spell that. poor man's pepper or pepper grass. It is a type of wild mustard. This is just coming up, so we'll have this around for like another 3 or 4 months, and then it'll die back. All parts of this plant can be eaten. There's a nice little taproot here. The leaves, I love the seeds because I can go, oops, I didn't do it. Dang it. Oh, I failed. Oh well. Usually you can strip those off really fun. The first bite, and part of this is starting to work on your palate a little bit. As herbalists, as you go forward, just like we talk about sommeliers, right? The wine steward comes, oh, this has an oakiness with a mineral finish with a hint of blackberry. That's somebody who drank a lot of wine. So we need to be able to do that with our herbs, and we'll talk about why here more as we go along. But starting to look for the nuance of flavor as you taste. And so when you eat this, the first bite will be sweet, like a millisecond of like, ooh, sweet. Then you'll go, ooh, wait, it's spicy, and it'll start to ramp up. You go, oh, I hope it's not too spicy, right? If you're not, and it'll just stop and boom, and it shuts down before it gets too spicy. So it's not like cayenne pepper, it's kind of like just a little zing. So grab a whatever off of there.
Grab a
This is
whatever.
Virginicus. This is also, oh, I didn't even ask. Nobody said anything. Nobody studied Chinese medicine, and you were acupuncturist.
Oh my god, I love that.
So it's also a Chinese herb.
One of those off and eat it. That's delicious.
Oh yeah, no, it's super yummy. Oh, here, I just
What's the real name? I'm sorry.
Lepidium virginicus, poor man's pepper or pepper grass. So you eat it. What the heck? It's yummy.
Delicious.
You can make mustard out of it, and it's all right. I know you have this in Poland. So your grandmother ever do a mustard plaster? Well, you grew up in the city, didn't you? In the country in Poland, I know they do that. So if you were like from the south, if you had a dry, sticky cough and couldn't get it out, back in the day, your grandmother would have made a mustard plaster. So she'd mash it up, put it on your chest, and maybe blister your chest. Like it'll burn. And that will make your mucous membranes secrete more moisture to help break up that sticky, dry cough. You can eat it the same way. And so this is a Chinese herb, doesn't matter, Ting Li Zi. So the Chinese use this for a cough-causing constipation. So what it does is it, like spiciness, and I always think of this as very much like wasabi. And wasabi with your sushi or whatever kind of tingles your nose, makes your nose run at some point. So it's making this nose run. If you eat it, it'll make all of the mucous membranes all the way down to the other end, will make that secrete moisture. And so the lungs will start to secrete more moisture, breaking up that dry, sticky cough, and it will start to move the poop. Not, you aren't going to be all running to the toilet, I promise. It's also, and I always forget to mention this one, like I got to make sure it's in the notes. The Cherokee. And I learned this from one of the Cherokee elders, and I always forget to mention it. This is used as a styptic, which is fancy talk for stop bleeding. And so usually it's the aerial parts that are used. The leaves or the seeds are used for stop bleeding.
So you mash it in water or something? And
You can make a tea out of it or just eat it. Like eating it will help stop bleeding. If some of you may have heard of shepherd's purse, it's used the same as shepherd's purse. So this is the equivalent of shepherd's purse. And literally, like, look in your yard, it's everywhere. If you don't have it, go steal one from somewhere and throw it in your yard. Yeah.
So are you talking about Biden's?
Mm-mm.
No?
No.
The wild mustard.
All I caught was Shepherd's.
Oh, no. So you're thinking shepherd's needle was the other name. So this is,
Yeah, okay.
so this one's used to stop bleeding.
Shepherd's purse it's called.
Yeah, so there's another herb called shepherd's purse
Shepherd's,
that I forget the Latin name of, that's used the same way. Shepherd's purse is better known. Nobody knows this one for stop bleeding, except for the Cherokee.
can this be used topically?
It can be used topically as well, yeah. And also just make yummy mustard. Throw this, like, wouldn't that be good in like a soup or something, like in a sweet potato or pumpkin soup? Throw this in there to break up the heaviness of it. So we should all eat more of this. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're all right.
If you dry that, is it just as good dried as it is fresh?
For
Because
the
I have so much of it, and I never know if I dry it, is it worth it?
yes. So for it to act for breaking up a dry cough, yes. For the stop bleed, it's better fresh. The
Meaning it's fresh. Okay.
and it's a yummy herb. Dried is fine.
I love it.
And putting it in a vinegar to make a spicy mustardy kind of thing, yes. Put it in with all your pickling spices. You can dry it and grind it into a powder to add into stuff. It's just yeah.
I like it in soup.
Yeah. In heavier soups, it's wonderful.
Send the Zoom link to me?
No, I'm sorry. We're not gonna step off of here.
so I'll
I'm
just
gonna
send
make
that.
it's in the shade, so value added.
That went fast.
And I always like to make sure that we give some level of talking to the spiritual practices of stuff as well. So this herb here, like this big clump, find one that wants to come with me. You want to come out? Oh, almost. Come on. So you see this big taproot on here. So this is called guinea hen weed, or oh my God, what's the other name for it? Help me out.
I know guinea hen weed.
I can't think of it. This one is disgusting. It's not true. Some people really like it. I am not a fan of eating this. So the leaves have kind of a burnt rubber and garlic flavor to it. It is an anti-parasitic used internally. It can be used for viral or bacterial infections, and feel free to pick a leaf off of there. It is a hardy growing. This grows more in the Caribbean. This is probably about as far north as it goes. I don't think it'll make it to Gainesville. Grab a leaf off of there and yeah, pass those around. Eat it if you want. It's totally fine to eat. But there's two things this is used for. In South America, in a lot of traditions, there's a type of ritual bathing called Olympia. And limpiar means to bathe, but this is a type of ritual bathing. If you've ever seen a video of where like somebody's beating somebody with plants, or they take in some flower water and they spit on you, like that's a thing. That's all part of Olympia. So you can do it to yourself, or other people can do it to you. So usually it's aromatic plants, and this one, it's always funny. Every culture has ritual bathing, like in Christianity, it's called baptism. Saunas from a lot of traditions was a spiritual ritual that was done. So I forget what it's called in Mexico. They have a kind of like a sweat lodge that's a similar type of thing. So this is anti-parasitic. So we would use this for intestinal worms and some bloodborne parasites. So from a spiritual standpoint, parasites that are spiritual parasites, things that are glommed onto you or that are following you around, is a parasite that needs to be removed. So we would wipe you off with this to get those types of parasites. The root is to break or block curses. So you hear about in some traditions things like the evil eye kind of things. So this was to stop or block those things.
So they would eat it, or?
You could wear it or put it around your house. It can be dried. Or if you're really good, you somehow put it on the person trying to throw a curse. You gotta be slick for that. Oh, that's nasty.
What is it called again?
Guinea hen weed. That's the Spanish name for it is anamu.
Anamu.
I don't know.
Makes my nose,
Yeah, it's intense. That would make me leave. And I'm not going to talk about it a lot, but just for your own education, this is an ayahuasca vine growing behind you. It's a very unassuming, beautiful vine that I think the power isn't ingesting it, but to sit with it. I actually encourage people to sit with plants more than ingesting them when you're trying to learn about it. So there's a lot of power with just hanging. All right, let's see what else I can find. And I'm just going to show off. That's a mahogany tree.
Show off.
We're going to talk about that. Don't worry. That is the best herb ever.
Oh, that's good to know. 'Cause I have a lot of it.
Oh, it's everywhere. Oh, I love her.
Ooh, what is that?
Right? This is not native. Well, actually, it is native. I apologize. Looks like this is done. I'm going to have a harvest use this.
What are you drinking?
Mostly kratom, but there's like 4 or 5 other herbs in there too. Go to cola for focus.
Is that the name?
Mullen.
Mullen, I say it wrong every time. But that's the mucilent one. That's the one that's good for cost. Cowboy toilet paper.
Yes, all of those things. So this is mullein. This is actually the one that grows up north more. So you'll find it like kind of Georgia north. It's originally, I believe, from Greece. We have a Florida version of this that grows here. It's smaller leaves and not quite as fuzzy. And I'm going to say like more of a petting thing. You can eat it, but it'll probably make you cough. So.
What's the name of it?
Mullein, Mullein, I believe. So, a lot of people know it for what she just said. It's good for a dry cough. It will stimulate the mucous membranes. The parts that people frequently don't know, it's a biennial, so its life cycle is 2 years. So I planted this last year and it didn't put out a flower. So this year it's starting to go up, and in the next few months it's going to put out a flower stalk, hopefully that big. And it's so funny, like that leaf is so soft and petable. When it puts out its center flower stalk, it is hard like an iron bar. It's hard and straight. And it'll have these very delicate yellow flowers on there. So the flowers are harvested for something called ear oil. It's a classical formula that has mullein flowers, St. John's wort flowers, and garlic put into an oil used for external ear infections, otitis media. And the only way to harvest them fresh is you go out and pick them. So you can buy in the store, but they may or may not have used the fresh ones. The flowers. Yeah, so it's also used as a smoking herb. So this is sometimes called Indian tobacco. And so dried, you can just leave the center stem and just pull the edges of it off. Dried, and so it will burn even like tobacco, but no nicotine. Burning any hot burning leaves in your lung is bad for you. Everybody get a pet. So I wouldn't give this to a non-smoker to smoke. If somebody's already smoking tobacco or other things, it's super appropriate to use this, and it can be combined with other herbs, like skullcap is an herb that's used for.
Is one of the ones that they mix that with.
Yes.
Because when we were sick, when we were little, they would smoke us with that stuff.
Yeah, they would blow it in your ear, and yes, very much so. So it can be, you can take another herb and add it to it, like skullcap, for acute anxiety attacks. So they roll up a joint or they put it in a pipe, and literally they're like, I'm freaking out. You take a hit off of it. And because we can't inject herbs into people, if we eat or drink an herb, it takes a little while to get it into the system. Smoking is the second fastest way, other than injecting it into your vein, to get medicine into you. So for a smoker, this can be used. It's also used as a mix in ceremonial smoking blends, in a pipe, and other reasons. So the seeds that are left over after a flower goes, and it goes to seed, right? The seeds are a fish poison, as it contains an alkaloid called rotonin that will paralyze the lungs of a fish. And so if you've ever seen like the documentary where the native people are mashing up a root, that's a different plant. That's that plant. They're mashing up the roots of a plant, and all the fish come up and then they scoop them up. The seeds of this can be used for that. And they're not poisoned, it just paralyzed their gills. So if left alone, they would actually start swimming in like another 20, 30 minutes. So they can easily scoop up all the fish and have enough food for a bunch of people. The problem is that isolated chemical is used to kill fish in large ponds. Like Fish and Game, if there's like a bunch of exotic species of fish, will kill everything with that. So they'll use higher doses isolated. So you'd never want to do that in the same body of water frequently when you do it. The roots of this, and this is one of those things I learned from Jim McDonald, who learned it from the Ojibwa, is used to help align the low back and sacrum. So you can put a chiropractor out of business. And so literally when we see a misalignment of the spine, too many cars. I've literally had people come in, they're like, oh, I think I threw my back out. And they take a dropper or two of a tincture of the root and go, that's weird. The stem, right, so that center stalk that comes off in the second year is used for the upper back, the thoracic spine, and the cervical spine. They can be combined together or just like, what the heck. It's always a trick, like there isn't a lot of it in Florida that's growing wild, so whenever I go up to conferences up in North Carolina or wherever, some of the roots and stems tend to magically appear in my car.
To Bob, my mom was having trouble with her back, and I had some of the root, I made her some tea, and she was drinking it every day, and she said it helped.
Yeah,
So I was like,
it can be traumatic.
Are the roots only used for the first year of growing it, or the second year?
I've heard different arguments of first year, second year, and I'm going to quote David Winston on that one. So the best time to harvest an herb is when you're there and the herb's there. I'm not going to ask the plant how old it is before I harvest it. I'm sorry, somebody was...
If I had this at home, would I like take the bottom leaves off and dry them and store them?
So that's a really good question. It's funny, we used to have two of these. Where's Mike? The tall dude walking around here, that's Mike. He's the one who like makes sure that this is all still growing. He's learning as he goes, and so he was like, oh, look at all these old leaves, and so he thought he was being helpful, and he went and clipped them all, and he killed one of them. So the reality is those leaves create a little microbiome in there, and so those bottom leaves are literally breaking down and creating mulch to feed it, but it's also helping keep the moisture content just so. This plant doesn't like to be disturbed, so I would probably harvest like the upper larger leaves as I went, or if you're like, all right, it's time to harvest the root out of this sucker, it's going to have all of these, but then you got enough for, like, that's probably 2 pounds of leaves there, so that's a lot of mullein. How am I doing on time? I'm really just trying to find shade. I'm just going to brag. We're not going to talk about it. This is baobab from Africa, that huge tree that like they put houses in. But this is a nice place to talk about Biden's. So, Biden's Alba, and
Yeah.
there we go. So I first learned this this plant weed. So it's Spanish needle, beggar's tick. There's a bunch of little names for it. Ooh, it's got a snail on it. Oh, there. I first learned that this was a green you could cook up like spinach. You could throw it in your salad. And I had always heard that, like, well, if while you're out gardening, you got a little bug bite, you mash it up and you can put it on the bug bite or scratch. So it's what's called a spit poultice. And so a spit poultice, I can just mash it like this and then put it on there. Or if you're really cool, all right, whose granddaddy used to do chewing tobacco and would spit it on you if you got like a bee sting or something? You know? Well, actually, he was smart. So a spit poultice can also be
Actually spit.
and it does the same thing, and we put that on a bug bite. So one of the things that, you know, I knew that and I would repeat that forever. Turns out this is also a Chinese herb, Shen Feng Sao. And in China, they would drink this in the summertime in southern China as a tea to cool off with. That starts to bring up that idea of energetics, that it's hot out, so I drink a tea that's cooling. It's not that I was like, oh, just drink some water. Why is that better than iced tea? Why is that better than anything else? And so this was specifically used in the summertime to cool off. So guess what? It's cooling. There was also some interesting research on it for things like chronic malaria, leukemia, and some other things. That was like, oh, this little weed's kind of powerful. And then there's a herbalist who literally just passed away a couple of months ago, Harold Bruner, who wrote the book on Lyme disease as well as one on herbal antibiotics. He talks about this plant specifically for chronic Lyme disease. So it's like, oh, this little salad green is actually pretty powerful. But I learned about it, and actually I'm going to pass this one around. So it's interesting, square stem. So it's in the aster family, not the mint family. So not just because it has a square stem doesn't always mean that it's a mint. So this one's different. And I'm going to say, wow, windy. This isn't 3 leaves. This is 1 leaf that has 3 leaflets. So it's important to see, and we'll, at some point if you go forward, we're going to do botany. Don't worry. She's going to teach it. No. PhD, oh my God. So taste this one, and if you've ever just pull like a little leaflet off of there, and I picked those specifically so that it didn't taste horrid. So if you've ever grown lettuce in your garden or something, you're like, yay, here's my lettuce. And when it first comes up, you're picking it, you're eating it, it tastes yummy. And then at some point, as time goes on, it bolts. It goes into flower. And you're like, oh, it's gross now. And you pull it out, hopefully you compost it. The reality is that act of going into flower changes the chemistry and the flavor palette. Bitter is good for you. Like our culture, we have 2 flavors in our culture, sweet and sour, or excuse me, sweet and salty. Everything we eat is sweet and salty. There are other flavors in the world. There is bitter, sour, and acrid. And so half the time when we talk about food therapies, we talk about literally, it's not a specific herb so much as you need more bitter and sour in your diet. We try to change that flavor palette of the foods we eat. So for food, it's better to pick this before it goes into flower. You can still eat it, it just doesn't taste as good. So when we pick it after it's gone into flower, you'll notice the flavors changed a little bit. So it'll be a little bitter. Eat it, don't eat it, your choice.
Does the flower have any medicinal properties?
It's yummy. Flowers are interesting. Flowers, put a different knot on there. Flowers are the reproductive organs of plants. And in a lot of cultures, people eat animal reproductive organs as an aphrodisiac to help with it in, Oceanic up in Tampa. Has a really nice Asian market that's been there forever. And if you go into the meat section there, they'll sell like pig uteruses, uteri, I don't know, what is it? And so that's to help with fertility issues as well as menstrual issues. So if you go out to Colorado, they got Rocky Mountain oysters out there. Bull testicles, it's an aphrodisiac. In the islands, it's Manish water, which is goat testicles. So there's all of these eating reproductive organs to help with reproductive function. And we're like, oh, those crazy native people. All right, who takes thyroid medication? Synthroid is a synthetic version of thyroid hormones, or you can buy the natural version gotten by prescription called Armour Thyroid, which is just pig thyroids ground up. And so there is some active medicinal properties to those things. So if we're eating plant flowers, that has a reproductive function, and it has both genders hormones in there, right? It's both ovaries as well as the pistil, which the pollen comes off, which is the equivalent of, leave me alone, plant, you're so friendly, is the equivalent of sperm. So when we're eating that, it will oftentimes be added to foods as an aphrodisiac. and it's pretty. We eat with our eyes as much as our stomach. What do? We give roses. We don't give rose leaves. We give rose flowers as a token of love. Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, you're all right.
But I have a question. So when I was raised with that, like some of the stuff you're saying, new to me, but we use it for urinary issues when we were kids.
We're getting there.
I'm sorry.
You're right. Yeah. So, and that's, it's funny, for urinary tract infections is the one thing I always forget to mention about this because I have so much to say about this plant, honestly. So, yay, it's good for bug bites and it's a salad green. I was asked to go into the elementary school, this is a million years ago, like, oh, let's invite the herbalist to do the teach-in where you go in and you tell kids how cool your job is. So I went, like I do in a lot of organizations, I went outside the schoolyard and I picked a bunch of weeds and I walked into these second or third, I think they were third graders. I was like, here. And this was long before COVID, so this one kid in the front row coughing the whole time. The teacher was like, don't worry, he's not contagious. He's been doing that for, 6-8 weeks. He's got an inhaler. And third graders are not adventuresome, so I'm handing all these weeds around and they're like, yeah, I ain't eating that. And except for the one kid who was coughing. And so for some reason, that kid ate this plant. And I'm walking, my 15 minutes of fame are up. I'm walking down the hallway, and all of a sudden the teacher comes running down the hallway and says, Bob, what'd you get to little Johnny? And I'm like, crap. I was like, anaphylactic shock. I hope my malpractice is up to date. And I go, why? And it's like, he stopped coughing. And I was like, oh, his medication probably kicked in. And, we deny what we know to be true all the time. And a couple of weeks later, I get this letter written in third grader that says, thank you so much for curing me of my cough. And I'm like, somewhere I still, every once in a while I actually clean my house and I find it again. So don't ever be friends with an herbalist because now I needed to understand this plant better. I didn't know it as cough medicine. And so I found some old anthropologist from the 1500s who said the native people use it for cough. There's a million different types of cough. And so what I found was it had an affinity to the lungs. So it's good for any kind of cough, but you can give it for smoker's cough, COVID, whatever. And it's helpful. But what I figured out that it was specific for a lingering cough after a cold and flu with clear and white phlegm. A teaspoon to a tablespoon chewed up fresh will resolve the cough in a single dosage, usually within about 5 to 15 minutes. One dose, cough that you've had for weeks, gone. So you can use it for any type of cough, it just won't be magical. 80% of the time, this will resolve in a single dose. This is a magical herb. I've used this on children as young as 2 years old, where we made tea out of it and it worked. I haven't used it on younger kids because I haven't had a chance. So I would totally torture a 6-month-old not think twice about it. Mash it up, make it, put it in their food or something.
To make the tea, do you have to dry the leaves first, or can you just like?
Just like this. Like I literally tell people to just heat it up young.
What is it called?
Biden's Alba.
Biden's
Oh, I forgot that story.
President Biden.
Yes. So I got thrown off of a plant Facebook group once because I'd made this nice video. And I was like, everything you ever wanted to know about Biden, and with an S. And I was put in Facebook jail for 3 days because people didn't know the stupid Latin name. I was like, you're supposed to be plant people. So it is not a political statement to call this Biden. So it's also Latin. So bi means two, dent as in dental, so two tooth. And so if you look at there's a seed. So these little seeds, you'll notice that there's 2 little knobbies on there. And so those are the bidents. So every plant in this genus, the Biden's genus, will have the same seed structure. And Alba, Alabaster Cliffs of Dover, white. Alba refers to white. And so this has the white flower petals where most of them are yellow. So if you go in the back door, you'll notice these really pretty little yellow flowers there. Those are a different species of Biden. And so it has the classic yellow flowers. So Latin names sometimes give us information. Time check?
Time check. 12:58.
Oh, I can do one more. As long as we're standing here.
I was looking at those. I like those.
So this is another weed in your yard. Oh, also the Bidens is, all your pollinators love it. This is one of the major pollinator flowers in Florida. So bees, butterflies, moths. So stop mowing your yard and save the bees and all the other critters. So this is Jamaican chickweed. So up north you have a plant called chickweed, Stellaria media. This is our tropical equivalent. This grows throughout the tropics. And so this is Drymeria cordata. Don't worry, I have a slide that spells that. So we can use this as a lymphatic, i.e. it moves the lymph. So if you have chronic swollen lymph nodes, swollen glands, it also is helpful for the skin, and it makes a mean pesto.
Yeah.
So have a nibble. So true chickweed does not grow well down here. Like as you go further north, you'll be able to, that looks very good. As you go further north, it'll grow better. So pretty mild flavor. The chickweed that grows down here, like I'm in South St. Pete, and so there's a park right behind my house, and there's like 2 weeks I'll get actual true chickweed that grows. So usually true chickweed doesn't come until like Gainesville and further north. This one, the Drymeria, is here year round. Literally full sun, it'll grow over these stumps, it's everywhere. But mostly lymph, and it's helpful for the skin. It is an emollient for the skin, i.e. softens the skin.
How would you use it?
Make tea or just eat it. Like, I think it's a nice trailside nibble. And dried or fresh, but like it's always here. Like it's
It's invading.
totally, yeah. You can gather it just like you can get a clump of it. You can have 5 pounds and dry it if you want. It works fresh or dried.
And did you say it's a skin softener?
Yeah, very moistening to the skin. You could make a face mask out of it, especially for cystic acne. It wouldn't be wrong. It's slightly cooling. So
make a salve out of it.
you could make a salve out of it. Yeah, that's advanced.
Psoriasis and stuff.
It wouldn't be wrong for psoriasis or eczema. It could be used internally or topically. Yeah. So the trick is it's moistening. So if you had dry skin, it would be good. If you had overly
Well,
wet
I think
skin,
so it probably would be great for acne.
some types of acne it's good for, some not.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's for cystic acne it would be good, but for just like it's hormonal related acne, not so good.
Yeah, no good.
But for that hard, painful acne, you'd probably combine it with other herbs because you have to soften the hard outer part of it in order for it to break down some. So that's an advanced concept. Let's stop here and break for lunch. I'll say, cool if you got food with